then. You can't get your shit together. Fuck, even Yahoo can't get its shit together. All right, so. $12.80 by $7.20. $11.48 by $6.46. I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay. Try again. Is it still? Are you trying to tell me it's still? I don't believe that. I have a hard time believing it's still. There's no way. There's no fucking way that's possible. Oh, so I am streaming? What the fuck? All right, this is really embarrassing. Anyway, so let's continue. I don't know. I'm this close to just terminating this whole video, but if you're still with me, let's keep going. So I don't know where I was last. Bottom line is that, okay, so there's 3 things that we need to know about what semen retention is and what it does. And we need to separate the idea of semen retention, abstention from masturbation, abstention from masturbation to pornography. And so we need to understand all of that, okay? And so as I was saying, when I was a kid, we didn't have any of this stuff. Like, let's just forget about the whole sexual thing for a moment, and let's talk about television. Okay, so right now, what we call television is nothing like what I had when I was a kid. When I was a kid, if you wanted to watch television, in fact, I didn't even have a color television. A lot of people on our block did. I didn't for years. My dad was a real cheapskate when it came to television, so we just had this black and white television. But, and we didn't even have a remote. The reason why they call it a clicker, have you heard like your grandfather go, can you pass the clicker? They call it a clicker because the first remote controls weren't like now where you just press a silent button. Actually, the button, you had to push down hard and it went click, click, kink, kink. And so that's why it was called a clicker, because it made a clicking sound when you would push down on, whatever it was. And if we wanted to watch television, in our house, you actually walk up to the television and turn a knob and click, and then it would whoosh, whoosh, and there would be like this little ball of light that would slowly expand out, and then you might see something, and then you had to mess with the antennas because it was coming from the air, and you had to mess with your antennas and smack the box. I mean, sometimes just getting a picture was a big deal. And then you had, and this was in Los Angeles County, we had only 7 channels, even though there's 13 on the dial. Plus there's the UHF channel, which would have been the equivalent of what we don't even have cable anymore. The equivalent of cable, and this was just nonsense, stuff that But we had 7 channels, and of those 7 channels, only 3 of them were the big networks: ABC, CBS, and NBC. And my whole point about this is that you didn't have anything on demand. If you turned on the television at any given time, you had to watch what was on, and more than likely what you were watching was reruns. Reruns from 10 or 15 years ago. You were watching I Love Lucy or Star Trek or I Dream of Jeannie or Gunsmoke or something that, and you knew that even if it said tonight at 8 o'clock Gunsmoke or Star Trek, you knew that you were going to watch a rerun that you'd seen 20 times before, but it was the only thing we had. We didn't have any options. You could go to the movies or you could watch television, and that was it. The point I'm trying to make is that we didn't have this on-demand stimulation that people have now. They have this on-demand stimulation, and it's never enough. So little kids who don't have to communicate to a living person, who don't have to walk to go somewhere. We had to walk if we wanted to go somewhere. If you wanted to call somebody on the phone, you had to dial the phone, and there was no answering machine, and you had no idea. And if somebody didn't pick up the phone, you could have it ring for a half an hour and nobody would pick up the phone, and you wouldn't be able to leave a message. If somebody did pick up the phone, you'd say, "Is so-and-so there?" And they'd say, "No, she can't come to the phone right now," and hang up, or say, "No." And you know what I mean? It was totally different than today. Today you can leave text messages. You're being completely stimulated by this thing we call the internet. And now it's devices, apps. And so what's happening is that young people's brains, by young, I sound like such an old fart. By young people, I mean between 0 and 30. Their brains are being wired in such a way where they get immediate satisfaction and immediate response to their desires. And that gets boring very fast. And so, you have to have more and more stimulation in order for it to mean anything, in order for it to work. And so when it comes to sexuality, we have to understand that this is the main issue. It isn't about semen retention. This is what I want to make clear to you. It's not about semen retention. Having said that, people who practice NOFAP, guys who are not watching pornography and not masturbating to pornography, what's happening is their brain is given an opportunity to rewire itself. They're doing things like they're getting up off their ass and they're going and doing things. They're not sitting in front of computers, and masturbating 4 hours a day, even playing video games is the same kind of thing. Sitting in front of a video game for hours and hours and hours, it creates this loop of chemical interactions in the brain, and people are incapable of having any interpersonal connection. I was before I got distracted with the internet here. I was talking about a student that I had about 10 years ago, and he, like I said, he's probably close to 30 now, and he was in high school at the time. And he was telling me that he had friends. This was, again, 10 years ago. He had friends in high school whose idea of a date with a girl was that they would set a time for them to text each other. That was a date. And he said there were guys that didn't know how to walk up to a girl and say, "Do you want to go on a date?" They didn't know how to do that. They were frightened at that idea. I have since, this was probably again about, I don't know, how long, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, when I was newly in the, after my divorce, and I was looking into the dating scene again, and I remember talking to somebody who had met some guy online, and what he wanted to do after they had had dinner at a restaurant is he wanted them to go to their separate homes and sext each other. Like that for him, he couldn't have actual physical contact with somebody. He had to do it, and this was an adult. This wasn't, some kid. This is what the real problem is. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. Now, having said that, I am not trying to dissuade anybody from NOFAP, especially if you're like 30 years and younger, or even if you're older than that, you've become addicted to your stimulation. Has to be online, has to be through pornography or for anime or something like that, or the cams. That's another one. That's the live cams where you're talking or texting to a live person who can't see you, but you can see her, and all that. If you're addicted to that kind of stuff, then I recommend just getting the hell off of the internet. And if you have to be NOFAP for that, then go do that. And you can definitely have a reset physically by abstention of release. Definitely you can. So I want to tell you about that. So let's first get that part out of the way. That is a whole different thing. And that has nothing to do with true semen retention. So as I said, there's three types of semen retention that I want to talk about. And the first one is just simply not releasing, not ejaculating. And there's a lot of people that think that that is semen retention. It is not semen retention. That does nothing. I mean, you're withholding. Maybe you get a benefit out of it by learning how not to react to stimulus. Whenever you have a stimulus to go do something, you're having some discipline. That will rewire your brain, and there is some health benefits to that. But that is not semen retention. There's another one which was a big deal for a while. I don't know if people are still doing it, but people were doing it like crazy. Again, about 10 years ago, this was a big thing, and I would get in forums, I would get on people's case about it, which is where they would stimulate themselves sexually and bring themselves up to just about climax, and then they would not release. And I guess now there's this whole thing called, what do they call that? Orgasm denial or something like that, which is a whole sexual thing that people get into. So that is not semen retention either. True semen retention, which does have spiritual and energetic, which can give you superpowers. True semen retention is a result of having some kind of energetic practice and technique. If you have to force yourself not to release, it's not semen retention. The real semen retention is you're doing an energy practice, and there may be some techniques involved. And by techniques, I mean breath techniques, contraction of muscles and other things like that. Those kinds of techniques combined with the proper meditations and things like that will reverse the flow of the sexual fluids. And there's some controversy as to whether it actually reverses the flow. I honestly don't care. I can tell you that it feels like it does. And there is no there's no strain involved. You don't have to force yourself. You don't have to do anything. I was celibate for 6.5 years. And throughout those 6.5 years, I practiced true semen retention off and on, sometimes for long periods of time. And when I got to the end of that 6.5 years, I was 20, how old was I? 31, I think. When I got to the end of those 6.5 years, I actually had to, when I decided to be with a woman, I had to actually stop and meditate and go inside and consciously reverse the flow. I had to change the flow of energy in order to be able to, enjoy being with somebody else. So anything that's called semen retention that involves the force of will or some kind of weird, crazy nonsense, self-stimulation and not orgasming, or just simply not releasing, that has nothing to do with it and accomplishes nothing for you. In fact, if you're struggling and you're forcing it, it's not only not accomplishing anything for you, it can cause a lot of problems. Let's just talk about it from the emotional perspective. Now, again, I get a lot of guys commenting and asking questions who are conflating what NOFAP is, or they'll ask, "What do you think about not masturbating?" And then I have to ask, "What do you mean by that?" And what they mean by that is not masturbating to porn, but they think that that also means that they can't have any release of sexual fluids, and that it has to be the same. And if they, have a wet dream, or if they do, fall and break, and release that buildup of fluids, then they feel guilty and they feel bad. And I understand that feeling because it comes over you like a wave, and you feel like, I had that issue when I was a Christian. When I was a young man and I was a Christian, if I, after 6 months, couldn't, and I'm in the bathroom getting ready for school or something, and I just couldn't resist releasing, I would feel guilty for weeks, like God was angry with me. It's nonsense. It's just nuts. And so we have to understand that just because you're having an emotional reaction to something doesn't necessarily make it true. And I get a lot of people who contact me and say that they've slipped, and and then they feel really bad, and they say, "I can feel my energy leaving my body." That is nonsense. Release of sexual fluids, for a person who is not practicing true semen retention, is going to have zero effect on your energy body. Zero. The effect that you're experiencing is psychosomatic, and it is emotional. It may result in a loss of energy, but that's because emotionally, the guilt and whatever else you're feeling is releasing all of that. Okay? So let's put that aside for a moment. Now, let me address another myth, which has, again, it has partial truth to it. This is why this is such a confusing thing, because when you conflate all of this and you come to false conclusions, it doesn't mean you're 100% false. It means that there's some incomplete information. So one of the myths out there is that semen retention will increase your testosterone. So this is partially true and partially false. Because actually, if you're a single man, and you're not practicing a true semen retention practice, which will give you actual power, if you're not doing one of those things and you're doing anything else that I've mentioned, then you're better off actually having regular sex with a partner. If you have regular sex with a woman in a relationship, then that is going to increase your testosterone. If you're single and you're not having sex, that can also result in a decrease in testosterone. And there's another period of time which will result in a decrease in testosterone, and that is if you are married, living with your wife, and especially if you have children. Because when you're single, and even if you're single and you're out there dating, your body is wired to up the testosterone because technically you're out there looking for a mate. And here's what I've noticed now that I'm 55. All the way up to my 30s, my sex drive was through the roof, which tells me that my testosterone levels were going through the roof. When I hit my 30s, and then especially when I got married at 39, my testosterone levels went down. I gained weight. Why does this happen? Because when we got to go back to caveman times. Up before you have a family, you are out there fighting for your status. Your body is being told to go procreate, go procreate. Men, by the way, if women, you don't understand why it is that men, when you're out having lunch with them, a girl walks by and they do this, they'll be talking to you while they're looking at somebody else. And they'll still be talking to you, and then they'll come back as though they haven't done anything. If that just blows your mind, like, how can he be so rude? He has no idea he just did that. That's because inside the male body, and I can feel all the women going, that's not true, he knows exactly what he's doing. No, trust me, 90% of the time he has no clue he's doing it. Because what's happening is that in the male body, sperm is millions, I don't know if it's millions or billions of sperm, are being created every minute. And so his body is continuously screaming at him to procreate. Now, I'm not saying that's an excuse. I'm just telling you that's how it works. I had to teach myself because I like to think I'm an aware person. I had to teach myself to not do that. That if I was with a woman, whether she was my date or my friend, and we were sitting there talking, if some hot woman in a bikini is coming this way, I force myself to not look at her. In fact, if I know it's going to be a problem, I'll lean in so that I will be more engaged with her. So that's a reality that goes on in men's bodies. Now, I know that there's a NOFAP issue with women as well, and being that I'm not a woman, I don't know anything about that. But I can see that they get the same benefits, some of the same benefits, in that the hormones and everything in the body continue to increase. Because again, the increase in hormone is the body preparing itself for procreation. Now, here's something that I can share with you that happened with me. There were different periods of celibacy. One was a religious thing when I was a Christian, and that was just torture. If I could go back in time, I would sit myself down and say, look, if you don't want to have premarital sex, that's fine, but please just be a human being and release those fluids so that you can function better in life. But I'll tell you what did happen is that one of the benefits that does happen from not ejaculating, which again is different from semen retention, one of the things that does happen is that your body fills up with sexual fluids and pheromones, and that comes through the skin. And there was a period of time when, I'm not kidding you, women would throw themselves at me in a way that I've never experienced. And what's happening is that, you're secreting pheromones, like big time. And so women are picking up on that unconsciously. But the other thing is that women can sense when a man has made a decision not to have sex. They have a radar for it, and then that becomes the man they have to have. Why is that? This again, if a man's body is being constantly stimulated to procreate as many times as possible by being filled with millions of sperm being created every minute, right? Then the best strategy for procreation for a female is to find that one male that's got the best genetic material and who has the best DNA and all of those kinds of things. And, please don't get all righteous about it, guys or girls. I'm just talking generally about physiology. Everybody's different. We're all on a spectrum, okay? So please don't take this that I'm talking about you personally. And so I can tell you from personal experience that when that was happening, I think what was going on is that I had pheromones coming out like crazy, and that they could pick up on that I had made the decision that I was going to be single and celibate, meaning not having sex with another person. And I'm not kidding you. There were numerous times that this happened, but one time I was at a friend's house and there was a gathering. I think it was a party. And I went into the bathroom. I came out of the bathroom, and when I came out of the bathroom, I'm not kidding you, this woman threw me up against the wall. and said, pointed to an empty bedroom and said, you have to make love to me right now. Go in here. And she was trying to drag me into the bedroom. And she said that you reminded, because she knew that she had found out that I was celibate, that I wasn't having sex. And she said, you were just this wild stallion that I had to tame. Yeah, anyway. So, I mean, guys, if you want women to chase after you, then yeah, don't have sex. And don't release. And even if you are releasing and you've made the decision not to have sex, I mean, it's still going to have a similar effect. So there is some truth behind that. You are going to become more attractive if you are not releasing, and you're going to be more attractive if you are not having sex. And if you are young and, if you're 90 years old, that's different. But if you're 25 or, that's you're going to be a lot more attractive to women. Now, I was talking about a period, I'm going to say between 30 and 50, probably more like, 35 and 50. That range, I do believe that men's testosterone dips in that period. Even naturally, I think that happens. And I think the reason for that is because that's the period of time that men are supposed to be rearing children. And it is an absolute scientific fact that when a man gets married and has a kid, and he's in cohabitation with his wife or his pregnant wife, or and he's raising kids, his testosterone level will go down. Why is that? Because there's no need for him to procreate, because his focus needs to be on taking care of the procreations that he's already created. That's a survival technique of the physical body of the species. And what ends up happening as well is that there's an increase in what is the female hormone? I forget. You know what I'm talking about. So there's a decrease in testosterone and an increase in the female hormone, because why? He can't be a warrior going out conquering and fucking everything. He now has to be a caretaker. And so he needs more compassion, and he needs more emotional connection, because kids need emotional connection, and he changes, and that is that period. I can say that happened with me as well, even though I didn't have kids, but that did happen for me. But I think also is that what happens is that when guys get to be 50 and 55, have you noticed that, ladies, have you noticed that at that age, guys are really creepy, like old creepy men? I mean, I won't lie to you. I can feel that. I'm wanting to look at 20-year-old women, walking by in ways I haven't felt in years. And I think the reason for that is that the body is realizing, okay, the time, our time clocks is running short in our ability to procreate. You're not raising a family now. This is your last chance. Go out and procreate. Right? So we have to understand that there is a physical component to this that you can't guilt yourself out of. You can't do it. All right, so let's put that aside now, and let me talk about true semen retention. True sexual energy retention. Let's talk about that for a moment. I have experience in that. And as I said before, true semen retention in a spiritual practice is going to mean that there is no struggle. If you are struggling to not release, you're not practicing semen retention, and it's not having any beneficial effects for you spiritually or energetically. You might as well just go and be human. And if you, again, as I said earlier, if you struggle, you could damage yourself. And I'll go back to this very briefly, but as I said, there was a point in time, I don't know if people are still doing it, when there was this thing where men were thinking they were getting spiritual powers by stimulating themselves sexually, bringing themselves right up to the edge and then holding back. And that is incredibly destructive. Because what ends up happening at that point is that your body is already releasing, and it is set up to release those fluids. The semen and the sperm have been activated, and they are waiting to be released. And if you don't release it, then what ends up happening is you have this very hot energy that sits there, and if you don't release it, then it actually starts to rot. And this can be very, this causes all kinds of negative thinking, and it's very destructive. The other thing is that when you get to that level of stimulation, the sperm actually does end up getting released through your urine at that point. It's not being retained by the body anymore. So you're not getting any benefit, you're releasing anyway, and you're heating yourself up and making your head crazy and making your body, it can be very destructive. All right, so let me get that out of the way. All right, so now let's talk about the practices that actually work. If you go onto my Patreon channel, just at the $25 level, if you go onto my Patreon channel, there is a practice called, what is it called? Sat Kriya. If you practice Sat Kriya, that is one technique that you can use if you want to be celibate and you want to practice semen retention and have that the fluids going up the spinal column and opening up the third eye and the pineal gland to give you superpowers. That is one way to do it. And, there's some physical things involved and some muscle contractions and some breath work, and there's a posture and there's a mantra and all of that connected to it. And if you do that, for 11 minutes a day, if you can do it for 11 minutes a day, then you're a superhero. But even if you do it for just 3 minutes a day, that will get you started. And again, even if you decided to do that and do it, say, for a week at a time, and then release, and then a week at a time, that would build up your energy quite a bit. And you would get all of the benefits of that. The other techniques that I know of have to do with doing, for me, when I was training in spirit fighting like 3 hours a day, I didn't have to do anything else, and I had no desire because all of that energy was going into my aura. And again, there was no struggle with that. And I did see a tremendous amount of, a lot of crazy things did happen. And, for those 6.5 years when I was practicing true semen retention on and off, it shifted and changed my body. And I think that's one of the reasons why at 55, I'm as healthy as I am. And why when, the last time I had my numbers checked, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, it came back like, I looked like a 25-year-old Olympic athlete in terms of my numbers. Didn't look like, I was my age. I don't have to take any medication and blah, 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 blah. That was because I spent 6.5 years doing actual semen retention and energy work. And the whole point of that, especially when you're young, is it will shift and change your organs and open up the meridians and do all kinds of great things. So bottom line here is this. If this is an issue for you, stop watching porn. Get yourself the hell off the internet. Stop, indulging in anime and all those kinds of things. Actually go out and date. Put your phone down, put your Tinder down, because it's the same thing. Put all that stuff down and go places and meet people and interact with them. And start having interpersonal relationships. Learn how to communicate with people. Learn how to go through the dating process. The apps like the Tinder thing, it screws all that up. It's not the same. When you online, I'll meet you here, and you show up and you have sex with somebody you just met on Tinder. I got nothing against that. I have a moral thing against it. I'm just saying if that's how you do things and you haven't learned how to go through the mating ritual, that the rest of us had to go through years past, then your brain is not going to wire correctly. And that has impact on all aspects of your life. And it has a definite impact on your spiritual progress, especially if you want to learn from me. Because I'm going to be giving you exercise that's going to require discipline and all kinds of other things. And if you don't have that built in, you won't be able to follow through. I've got a practice on here on my courses.thunderwizard.com page. I've got a practice on there for how to become an immortal. And if you're not able to learn how to function the ways I'm talking about, walking to go places, meeting people in person, having the discipline to follow through, learning from somebody in person, like if you want to learn martial arts or you want to learn yoga or you want to learn anything, go and just be in the same room with a teacher and have them teach you. There's all kinds of things that happen to your brain that you can't get if you're doing it on the internet. And again, starting about 10 years ago, I would have people contact me saying, can you teach me martial arts via Skype? And I would say, no, why in the world would I want to do that? And they would treat me like, I was a commodity. And they would say, no, I want to pay you and I want you to do this and this is what I want to learn from you. And I said, that's not how this works. That's not how this whole thing works. Because again, they don't have the wiring in their brain is off. So anyway, I don't know if I've said everything I want to say, but I got a lot of information out. Hopefully it was entertaining for you when I was cussing at YouTube, trying to figure out why why my thing wasn't working. But anyway, all right. So I will take some questions, especially if you have intelligent questions. If you're new to the channel, please write the word question, and then I'll answer it. Please avoid just writing comments. I don't need a cheering section, and I'm not interested in your comments. It takes away from my ability to read people's questions. All right, so let's see here. Okay, Modern Mystic question. Do you teach any practices one can use with their semen? I already gave you that. It's called Sat Kriya. And for that, you would need to go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at the entry level to have access for it. And then go to the bottom of the page and keep clicking more videos until you find the one that's called Sat Kriya. And then I have a whole video on that. And then he says, is there bases? Do you mean basis? BASIS. Is there a basis? Is there a basis to retaining your semen orally? I don't know what the fuck that means. You mean like put it in your mouth? Fuck no. No, sorry, no. That means nothing. No, there's no basis to that. Or using it to charge sigils or candle magic. Well, somebody, you could do it that way. I wouldn't. Western magic and the stuff that I learned, I'm not going to say that Western magic doesn't work, and you're talking about some things that you see a lot in Western magic type stuff. What you're talking about there, using your semen to do magic, I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but the difference between that kind of magic and the kind of stuff that I learned is like the difference between trying to take an 18-wheeler and going on a slalom course and taking an electric motorcycle and going down that same slalom course. It's too much work. It's too clunky. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. It's if there's any benefit, I think it's psychosomatic, meaning that your belief in it is raised to a certain level because you think there's power in your semen and all that. And so there's nothing that won't, The other one is also, you're getting power from spirits, because spirits get power from your fluids as well as your emotions. And that is a much lower level of magic. And that's not, my experience is that if you want true power, you are the God. When I pray to deities and when I do mantras to deities, I'm not invoking or evoking, or I don't even know if I'm doing any of that. I see them as vibrations of my eternal self, and I'm seeking to focus on a certain vibration that I want to use to empower myself. So I'm empowering myself. I'm not worshiping a god. People ask me that a lot when I say, in order to have this planet work for you, you have to worship it. And people think I'm talking like Abrahamic worship, and I'm not. I'm talking about using ritual and technique to evoke a power that is also something within you. You are you're projecting it out and using it to expand your own innate powers. All right. So bear in mind, whenever somebody writes something that's even the slightest bit profane, YouTube will automatically hold it for review. So Modern Mystic threw out some things. And again, it's not a question. Please just leave it to questions, you guys. All right. Stephen Borowski, question. I practice strict retention, so I don't know what you mean when you say that. And I use some of the Taoist techniques to orgasm without ejaculation. Okay, we talked about this. And try to circulate and increase the energy around my body. Is this helpful? No. You're kidding yourself. Now, we can call it Taoist techniques because there's a guy out there, Mantak Chia, who has written some books, and he has this in there. It's nonsense. Mantak Chia isn't even, there's all different kinds of Taoist sects, by the way. There's, some of them have different beliefs, but that stuff is nonsense. It's not only does it not help you, it is damaging you. And I can tell you from personal experience because I tried that too. And I can tell you that it damaged my energy. It damaged my nervous system. It took me a while to heal that. It's screwing you up in all kinds of different ways. So no. Once you stimulate yourself to almost, orgasm, those fluids are already released, as I said. They're going to be released out your urine and out through other places. You have released a fire within you. That fire then sits. If you don't release it, it sits in your testes and it sits in your lower chakras and it rots. So that whole thing about, and there's like this magic point where you press on a point on your perineum and it keeps from, and somehow people think it's already been released, through the urethra, and they're trying to keep it from going out, and somehow they think that it's nonsense. It's the biggest nonsense out there, and this is why you shouldn't learn Taoism from books. If you want to learn, find a real teacher and have them teach you. So no, Steve, my suggestion to you is to throw those books away and to stop doing that immediately and just be a normal person. Just release and do your energy practices. That is far more beneficial for your energy and for your aura than what you just talked about. You asked, so I'm telling you. All right. Crystal Warrior, please don't give out any advice on my channel. This is not a free-for-all, okay? Do not give out advice on my channel, so I'm going to remove that. And this guy takes test. I don't know what that is. I don't even know what the hell that is. And I'm not talking, anyway. Test booster. All right, where else are we going? Going to Paul Kupari question, where should the T numbers be at 50s? I don't know. It depends. First off, I'm not a doctor, so I can't tell you, but from a doctor who I do recommend, his response was, and I only saw this because I saw it in a video, his response is, well, how much testosterone do you need? My body's doing just fine. I don't know what my numbers are. But see, here's the thing. I can tell you when I was in my 20s, and I was a weightlifter, and I lifted hard, much harder than I do now. And I struggled like hell to pack on muscle. I was 145 pounds. I'm 210 pounds now. I was 145 pounds. And I could barely put muscle onto my body. Didn't matter. And I know I was full of testosterone. So the question isn't how much testosterone you have in the body. The question is how much of that testosterone is your body able to use? That's the important thing. So just going by numbers, I don't think is the best way to do it. I wouldn't worry about it. There's all kinds of things that affect testosterone as well. If you're depressed, that'll affect your testosterone. If you have mental issues, if you're in conflict with yourself, that'll affect your testosterone. If your mental attitude and your psychological state has as much to do as anything else with it, in my experience. So I'm not gonna, even if I had that answer to that question, I wouldn't say it, because not everybody fits into that, and I don't think the actual numbers mean anything. Is your body using what it's producing? I'm in Beeson question. I'm new. Are you the author of Kuji Kiri books? No. AJ Gurney, please write the word question. I almost missed your question. Do you think there is any negative to just, what do you mean any negative? Any negative, again, if you guys are going to write questions, put the questions in, make sure you put all the words in there, all the spelling, so I can read it and know what you're saying. Do you think there is any negative to just bottling up and denying the urges? Yes, I said that already. Maybe you wrote that before. Yes, just be a normal. Are you going to hold your crap in? No, you're going to go sit on the toilet and release. Release. Just, figure out if you're the person who pornography or online or anime, is screwing you up, and learn how to do it with, just release when you need to without all that garbage. He says, I prefer to abstain, but it seems to give no benefits other than a clean conscience. Okay, so see, this is just your guilt. There is nothing spiritual about holding in your urine, your feces, or your sexual fluids. There's nothing spiritual about it. There's nothing moral about it. Your clear conscience is because you have some really fucked up psychological guilt issues around your own sex drive. That's what needs to be dealt with. Just be a normal human being. There's no spiritual benefit in that, especially if you're doing it out of guilt. Zero. All right. Where else? What else? Where were we? Sorry, see, this is what I mean. If you guys just focus on the questions, I don't have to scroll through here. Question, can we increase semen volume and semen volume? I don't fucking know. Why do you care? Who gives a shit? Why do you give a shit? Are you going to be a porn star and you need to have a big stream? Do you need to go 2 or 3 times, while the cameras are rolling? Who gives a shit, Paul? Sorry. It's silly. Come on, you guys, it's silly. Just be normal people. Just be normal human beings. James Moffat, question. I'm doing rune divination learning. Is your book, Rune Divination, the one to get to teach me to read them? Of course. What am I going to say? No, don't buy my book. Yes, buy my books. Go to courses.thunderwizard.com and click on where it says books. I recommend you get all 3 of my rune books. I recommend that you get all of my videos. And in fact, I recommend that you click on the link for Rune Divination certification. runecertification.thunderwizard.com. Go click on that. Yes, I am the guy to learn from, in my opinion. I think I am the rune master that you should learn from. I'm biased, but if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't write books and do all that other stuff. So what am I going to say? Of course I think you should read my books. Onimus Vitae Illuminis. Question. Anytime I raise my Kundalini. All right, so there's an assumption right there. How do I know you're raising your Kundalini? What does that mean, you're raising your Kundalini? So you're new to my channel, right? So I recommend that you go and watch my videos about Kundalini and what Kundalini really is. Kundalini is not like Chi. Chi or prana is life force energy, and those things you can immediately raise. You can raise your chi level by doing certain things. You can't do that with Kundalini. Kundalini does not work that way. So I already have a disagreement with you about your assumption about what Kundalini is. I'll continue with your question. I'm probably going to, have some differences with more of your assumptions. Anytime I raise my Kundalini, the people around me start becoming more and more unattractive. Should I heal my space or move forward with my spirit? So again, I don't know what the hell you mean by raising your Kundalini. All I know is that when you are in a space where you feel, and again, your feelings don't necessarily mean the truth, you're feeling more spiritually connected, then the people around you become more and more attractive. I don't know what that means either. Do you mean your potential romantic partners become less attractive to you? Does that mean that when you're focused spiritually, you become less inclined towards having a sexual or romantic relationship? Um, there's a lot there. Now, your question is, should I heal my space or move forward with my spirit? I'm sorry, my friend, I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't know what heal your space from what. A lot of assumptions in there. Based on the question, here's what I can say. I would need to talk with you and ask you a bunch of questions to really find out. But my guess is that you have psychological issues about your boundaries, and that you vacillate between having open, porous boundaries where you connect with people or people are attracted to you, and then you retreat inside yourself and you pull yourself away and people are unattractive. That is a sign of poor boundaries, and that's a psychological issue. And it makes me want to ask you all kinds of questions about your childhood, and you'd be better off getting counseling about your boundaries than about trying to heal your space and raise your Kundalini. One of the biggest issues with modern New Age spirituality is that people spiritualize everything. And that's an escape from your emotional reality. And just because you're having a physical experience of raising Kundalini doesn't mean anything. It doesn't necessarily mean you're having a spiritual experience or that you're more spiritually connected. It's just another way that you use to potentially disconnect yourself from your feelings. I don't know if you have a teacher, like you go and have a guru that you train in Kundalini yoga with. I don't know any of that. I would recommend having a teacher that you physically go to, that you learn from, who hopefully can teach you the difference between your experience of Kundalini and what Kundalini is. Before I go any further, Kundalini is the psychological energy that's in the spinal column that attaches you to this earth. Remember what I just said. People think Kundalini takes them out and gives them spiritual awareness. Kundalini is the mother. The mother is Maya, illusion, attachment to the earth. Kundalini yoga is about learning how to have your attachments and raise them to their highest vibrational level so that you can become psychologically mature. That is the point of Kundalini. Kundalini is not an escape from this world, quite the opposite. So if you really want to learn Kundalini and you want your chakras to open and you want your Kundalini to rise, then you have to learn how to be a mature person. And part of that is how to have healthy relationships and healthy boundaries. And bottom line is, what I hear in your statement is that you have boundary issues, and I think you have some psychological issues that I'm not sure you're aware of. And I think you could benefit from a teacher and from a psychologist. Probably isn't what you wanted to hear, but that's my take on it. Dean Nevins, question. How does the Ingvaj rune and mudra affect sexual energy? It is a technique you can use to purify your sexual energy, and it's a technique you can use to raise your sexual energy up the spinal column. So if you did, like let's say in the morning, if, not you personally, but if somebody did 3 minutes or 7 minutes of Sat Kriya, and then at night did their celestial Qigong and did the Ingvaj rune mudra, that would further help the sexual energy to rise up the spinal column and open up the third eye and the pineal. Saxon Corkhill Philpot. That's a mouthful. Okay, so that's not a question. Again, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm only interested in reading questions. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for participating. Dragon's Truth question. When doing an authentic semen retention practice, does the desire for sexual interaction disappear or diminish, or is it just the desire for release? That's actually a very good question. So your sexual desire doesn't necessarily go away, although I can remember when I was really deep into some of it that I just was not thinking about anything on this planet. And so that was different. How I wanted to interact with people was on a different level. But it didn't take it away. I'd go through periods up and down, and I would have to sit down and say, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to be in the world? And that's, I had to make that decision at one point. And, all of the muscles that you see here and the fact that I surf all day, that is a result of a decision I made that I wanted to be more in the physical world. Because I started to realize that I'd achieved a lot energetically. And, in terms of, spiritual martial arts, I got so far beyond the point of being able to defend myself and kick somebody's ass. I was off in a whole other, like an anime, cartoon universe. Like it just, there's no physical need for the amount of power that I had. It was just, so I said, you know what, I'm kind of lonely and I want to have that. For me, there are certain things I don't do anymore in my spiritual practices because it makes it impossible to interact with people. Because in order to interact with people, you've got to be able to tolerate their unconscious narcissism and weirdness, and you can't have your filter on and see it all the time. This is one of the reasons that I do this work, is because I do that with you guys. I focus all my energy and I slice you guys to pieces because I'm here to help you. But out there, it doesn't work. You can't have relationships with people. You certainly can't have a romantic relationship if you're constantly being able to see into somebody's unconscious mind. It becomes crazy. So I don't know if I answered your question or not. But, you're asking a question about something you obviously haven't experienced. And so your experience might be different than mine. And again, people want to ask everything ahead of time. Am I going to get this? Am I going to do? You won't know until you do it. So just go do it and you'll find out for you. If you don't have a teacher that can teach you, you can go onto the thunderwizard.com site and search for the video called Sat Kriya. And you only have to sign up at the $25 level. And if you want to just stay on for a month and exit, you can do that, but at least you'll have access to them. And do Sat Kriya and, the Ingvaj rune meditation, which Dean Nevins just talked about. If you do Sat Kriya in the morning and you do Ingvaj rune meditation at night, that might give you the ability to, not have to struggle, and then you can, do actual semen retention. And even in that case, doing those two things, it's okay to release every now and then. Don't get crazy about it. I mean, it's okay if you don't have to. I'm not saying that, you have to release. I'm just saying don't get weird about it. Because at some point, there's a good chance, unless you're into some really, really high level stuff, there's a good chance you're not gonna, you're gonna slip. And then people beat themselves up and it's just a waste of time. So don't get into any of that garbage. Anyway, I hope I answered your question. Steve Borowski question. I recently did 8 months celibate. I don't know what that means. Does that mean you weren't ejaculating? Does that mean that you had nightly emissions, or does that mean that what does that mean? But he says, I recently did 8 months celibate. I had no desire to release, but I got difficult symptoms, very intense vibrations, feeling like I'm shaking apart. Tai Chi for this? Well, Steve, do you have a teacher? Because if you're having that kind of intense feelings and you don't have a teacher who knows what the hell's going on, you could be damaging yourself, and you could be kidding yourself. For all I know, your nerves were, flipping out. I don't really know what was going on. But again, this is why don't just pick up a book or read stuff off the internet or watch YouTube and expect to get anything from it. You got to have a teacher. When you're getting to this kind of stuff, you can't do it by yourself. So I honestly don't know. But you're asking, what are you asking me? You're asking me, is Tai Chi going to fix your symptoms? And why do you want to fix those symptoms? Why don't you just stop that? Again, it makes me want to ask you, why are you retaining it all? Because if you're putting yourself through that kind of craziness, you know what I mean? There's something in your reason for doing it that is bothering me. It's coming from an intensity. It's coming from an insecurity. coming from a need. You're not comfortable just being human. There's something going on that level that's bothering me. That's why I get that look on my face. This squinty-eyed look on my face means that my unconscious detectors, I can tell that you've got unconscious issues surrounding sex and surrounding power and surrounding your boundaries. So no, Tai Chi at this point would be like trying to put a Band-Aid on a cancer sore. You don't even know what the fuck is wrong with you. I would say stop all that. Maybe get some counseling, get a teacher, have normal relationships, be a normal person, and find a teacher. If you want to find a teacher to teach you high-level energy work, go find one. But don't do this shit on your own. You're wasting your time. Saxon Corkill Philfot, ask the question again. Put the word question in front of it so I see it. Paul Kupare, I need to get a bigger screen TV so I can do the celestial. So, are you just using your phone? That bothers me. Why don't you just go get a cheap laptop? They're not expensive. I mean, you can go into Walmart and get a laptop for $100 or something. I mean, seriously, guys. Guys, it's not that hard. You haven't said this, but it's in that same vein where I get people who complain about not having any money to do anything. But you're obviously on the internet. You're paying money for something. I mean, are you 14 years old and you're living at home with your parents and you don't have a job? Or are you an adult? Are you out there? Do you have a job? Are you paying rent? How is it that you can't afford, $100 for a laptop or a tablet? Not even an iPad, but just a tablet. Why is that such a big deal? And how is it that you're on the internet right now watching me live? What's missing? There's something missing that I'm not getting in this picture. I don't know you, so I don't know what the issue is, but yes, go get one. This is your life. You only get one life in this body. Go spend $100 or $200 on a bigger screen and just do it. Just go do it. Dean Nevin's question, how can I use Sat Kriya and Ingvaj if I still want to be sexually active? What do you mean how? You just do. You can do both. In fact, it'll make you more attractive to the opposite sex. So just do both. Just do them every day, and when some hot chick comes along and wants to invite you up to her place for a nightcap, then go enjoy that. That's all. Saxon Corkill Philfot question. I believe in the Norse gods literally. How do I find a good balance between spiritual interpretations of the gods similar to what you believe in my literal? What are you asking me for? You're asking how can I think the way I think and think the way you think? I don't know. I mean, you're not asking the question right. A question is an open-ended question that you want to be guided on. You're trying to get me to fit in your box. You want me to tell you that yes, the gods are literal, but here's how you can look at it differently. If you want to see the gods literally, you have the right to do that. Go do that. Then that means when I talk about the gods, you're not going to relate. That's okay. You don't have to believe what I believe. I don't have any need to proselytize you. It makes me want to know, why are you so attached to your belief? If you're attracted to the things that I say about the gods, then maybe, unclench your asshole a little bit and drop your need to believe in things literally. You can go back to it anytime you want. Just explore the idea of maybe you like the idea of it not being literal. I'm not saying one has to believe any one way, but look at your question again. You want to have everything your way, and yet you want me to tell you how to have things my way and your way at the same time. And I'm not the one that's making a distinction. You are. You're saying that your literal belief is different from mine. I mean, I can be literal too. I can easily go back and forth between literal and symbolic, without any hassle. That's me. That's because I see the world from a holographic perspective. I'll share this again. This is because you grew up in a Western country that for 2,000 years has been indoctrinated into Abrahamic dualist monotheism. You are a polytheist, but you still haven't let go of your dualism. This is one of my big things I have against neo-heathens. They're basically born-again Christians who have taken, Jesus's picture out of it and they've slapped in Odin on top of it. And they look at everything with the monotheist, dualist perspective. They've taken out all of the do's and don'ts. Now they can drink and have sex and smoke and do all the things that Christians wouldn't let them do. But they still see the gods the same way that, people see Jesus. They literally think that Jesus is sitting on a throne up in heaven somewhere. And they have to see it that way, because if they don't, then they're, so that's what I'm hearing, that you've got some monotheist dualism that you can't let go of. And I'll tell you why you can't let go of it. You asked my help, so I'm going to tell you, you're not going to like it. It's because you're afraid. You can't let go of your dualism and your literalism because it scares you. If it's literal, it makes sense. He's physically sitting there in a place that's in the Reticuli Nebulae planetary system, and he has a beard that's 8.7 inches long, and he's sitting there, and that makes you feel safe because you understand it. Maybe you don't understand my whatever it is you think my interpretation is. Maybe that frightens you. And that's okay too. You don't have to believe the way I believe. But don't try and force me into a box and then tell me I have to make you like it. That's not my job. You want to be literal, go be literal. If you want to understand what I teach, then open your mind and just try and experience it. I don't know what else to tell you, And again, I don't need you to believe one way or another. Stephen Borowski, that's not a question, so I'll go past it. John Burnham, question. Does this topic fall under the Rahu influence from a symbolic perspective? Well, yeah, Rahu is about, Rahu is about sex. Rahu is about pornography. Rahu is about technology. Rahu is about sex workers, prostitutes. He is, those things fall under Rahu. So yeah, we're talking about Rahu here, for sure. Avalon of Glimmere, question. I join in the live chat midstream. Does the same apply to females? No. Females, in fact, females can empower themselves energetically and not be celibate. They can also empower themselves energetically and be celibate. But it's not the same, because what's important from the feminine perspective is that you've got something piercing your aura. And so, for instance, there are sexual techniques where people have sex, tantric sex, where the man doesn't ejaculate and the woman does have an orgasm. And they go after it that way. And the reason why they do that is because by her having an orgasm, she releases and empowers his aura and gives him energy. And by him not releasing, then it changes his brain and his thinking process, so he's not objectifying her as much. And let's face it, sex is an objectifying thing, and that's not a bad thing either. It's only a bad thing when you're objectifying somebody without their permission. I personally, if I'm with a woman, I want her to objectify me. That's going to make for a more exciting time for me. But we're in the safety of, trust and whatever else, right? So it's only when somebody objectifies you without your permission that's when it's really damaging. Then when somebody objectifies you without your permission, they're stealing your energy or damaging your energy. They are trying to steal from you. This is, by the way, this is why prostitutes get paid. I don't know if you have heard this before. You don't pay a prostitute to have sex with you. You pay a prostitute to leave you alone. And that's what men are paying for. They don't want the emotional attachment. They don't want any responsibility. So instead of giving the energy, which is what ideally happens in the sexual exchange, the man gives her his energy. He literally chooses to release and diminish his life force energy and give it to her, she then surrounds him with her energy and gives it back to him in another way, and it creates this cycle. So prostitution is different because the man wants to objectify a woman, he wants to steal her energy, and in exchange for that, he gives her money. That's why after a certain number of years, prostitutes look really old. That's why. But the same is true for men. And I've been in this situation, if a woman can use a man and steal his energy as well. It comes out in different ways, and you have the henpecked husband who's out, pushing the baby carriage, and there's 3 kids, and she's nagging him and all that, and he looks old, but that's because there isn't a connection, an energetic connection where there's a cycle of trust. So it comes down to boundaries, people. Sex is about personal boundaries. You want to be sexually healthy, you have to have good psychological boundaries. And spiritual practice, especially spiritual practice when you're celibate, meaning not having sex with another person, not necessarily not releasing, but when you're single and you're practicing a spiritual practice, that helps your boundaries. And it helps you to when you're ready, to have a good and healing and empowering relationship. And then you understand what true Tantra is. Tantra is not some stupid sexual thing. It means the connection of masculine and feminine, where he's giving to her, she's taking his energy, giving it back to him, inspiring him to be his best self, where he comes and gives of his fruits of his labors to her, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? All right, so I'm getting close to the end of my time for today, but I'll take a couple of questions here. Again, Saxon, Corkhill, and everybody else, I don't need a back and forth. If I need clarification to answer a question, I will. But this isn't. I don't need a thank you or a screw you. I really don't. It saves time if you just ask a question. I know I'm controlling things and whatever, but that's how I like to do it. Steve Borowski question: I heard that the Nazi black sun symbol was originally green. I have no idea. I'm not even going to finish that because I don't know anything about it. I don't talk about things I don't know. Saxon Corkhill question: sorry if this question annoys you, but would it be a wise, good thing for me to incorporate both a holographic and literal? I don't know if it's good. What do you want to do? I'm trying to say there is no right way of doing things. You seem attracted to the idea of having a holographic understanding. So acknowledge that you're wired that way. Some people are wired to be literal. If I look at your chart, I might see that you have a strong Mercury here or something there, or Saturn and Jupiter are fighting or something, and that makes you very literal. So sometimes people are just very literal. They're born that way, and sometimes people are literal because they're afraid. But either way, it doesn't matter. This is where you are now, and I don't need you to be any other way than you are. Just be who you are. If you are attracted to the holographic idea, then go after it. Is it right or wrong or good or bad? There is no such thing. The universe doesn't do that. There's no right or wrong here. The only thing that matters is what gives you joy and makes you happy. And if it gives you joy to be a literalist, then you have my absolute support and respect to go do that. If you want to open yourself up to a more holographic viewpoint, that's great too. What I was going to share with you, which I didn't get to, I've shared it before and I'll share it again. The difference between the Abrahamic dualist monotheist mindset that we have and the true polytheist, and by true I mean the original understanding of polytheism which our ancestors had. And I can guarantee you very few, except for maybe 4-year-old kids, did not see the gods as being literal. How do I know that? Tacitus tells us this. Tacitus tells us that the Germanic tribes did not have idols or temples, that for them a lake, a stream, a meadow, the sky, the stars, those were the gods, that they saw the gods in nature. So that right there tells you they weren't literal. So for neo-heathens who run around screaming that the gods are literal, they don't know their own fucking history. And they don't know that they're still being programmed, and they're still a Christian in their heart. They're just replacing Jesus with Odin. So if you go, and the only religion that survives to this day that is a direct descendant of the original Indo-European religion. There's only one country in the world that still practices the original Indo-European religion, and that is India. They call it Hinduism, but it is a direct descendant and a direct evolution of their Vedic religion. And if you ask a Hindu person, now there are different kinds of Hindus. Some believe in, a single entity. Some believe in nothingness. Some believe in the gods, So there's all different kinds of Hindus out there. But the average Hindu can think holographically. And if you go to him and you say, Sir Hindu, Sir Average Hindu, is Ganesha a literal being? You'll say, oh, definitely, Ganesha is literal. Does he live in a specific place and has an elephant head on a boy's body? Yes, that's exactly who he is, and he exists in a very specific place with a head and a butt. And then in the same sentence, if you say, is Ganesha just a symbol? You'd say, oh yeah, he's just symbolic. So he's not a real person. No, it's a symbol of what, and here's what he represents. Are the gods just aspects of our own self? Yes, the gods are just reflections of us. Are we subservient and do we bow to these? Yes, we are subservient to them and they are outside of us. Are all the gods just inside of us? Yes, they're just inside of us. They can go and switch from one to the other. We don't know how to do that because we have been programmed to think in a dualistic way. And the reason why we have been programmed to do that is because Christianity is a religion for emperors who want to control an empire. And the way to control an empire is to force people how to think and to force them into dualist thinking, where God is up here and you're down there. And there's probably a lot of that in the influence of how you think and why you like to think that way. So if you're feeling pulled to let go of that, then by all means, let go of it. But don't do it just because I think it's a good idea. Do it because you want it. All right. Free thinker, please ask a question. I'm really not interested in your ideas. Nothing personal. This is a question and answer. He who greets with fire. Question: how many days for pheromones? I don't know. What you want? Just go buy some pheromones. How's that? 1 day. However many days it takes for the pheromones to get shipped to your house. That's how many. Steve Borowski question: I've regularly extreme sleep paralysis phenomenon since I was a child. Beings attempting to vampirize me or alien demonic type of stuff. Are these external spirits or are they inside of me? You probably just are having the sleep paralysis. It's your unconscious. It's your unconscious, and it doesn't matter whether it's internal or external. Even if it is external beings, they're just responding to your unconscious conflict. So get some counseling. Get some counseling and do some meditation. Do some energy work. Go onto my channel and do the free Qigong. That will get rid of it. If you really want to get rid of it, do the celestial Qigong. That will also fuck with your dualist viewpoint. You won't be able to hold on to that very long if you're doing celestial Qigong. Go up here to courses.thunderwizard.com and click on the celestial Qigong link. Free thinker question to Thunder Wizard. Yes, well, who else are you going to ask it to? Is there a connection between semen, the cerebrospinal fluid, and the functions of the spine? Yes. If so, are breath awareness practices beneficial in harnessing these substances? Yes. You had the answer to both of those questions. That really wasn't a question. You already knew the answer to that. Okay, so that's it for me right now. I have other stuff I got to do. So my apologies for the screwed up streaming. That's it. I'm moving. I'm going to go to Australia. I think they have better internet over there, so I'm going to move all the way to another continent so that I can do these live streams. Okay, my friends. I talk to you guys later. Bye.